म्यूचुअल फंड इस मैच की तरह है, कभी रन रेट ऊपर कभी थोड़ा सा नीचे।
शानदार शॉट सीधे वर्मा जी के गैलरी।
म्यूचुअल फंड्स की पिच पर जितना टाइम टिका रहेगा फायदा होने के चांसेस उतने बढ़ेंगे।
सही है।
म्यूचुअल फंड्स में पेशेंस रखना सही।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार जोखिमों के अधीन है। योजना से जुड़े सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
Motorola Razr 50 Ultra comes with Google Gemini.
Hi, I am AI anchor Sana, bringing the top headlines for you, presented by Motorola. Major push for regional air connectivity in Union Budget, 88 airports to link small cities. PM Narendra Modi praises Union Budget, says it will fulfill the aspirations of 140 crore Indians. Akali Dal MP Harsimrat Kaur Badal slams Union Budget, calls it anti-farmer.
The Prime Minister hailed today's budget as a force multiplier, calling it the people's budget. But the opposition is unimpressed. Rahul Gandhi called the budget a band-aid for a bullet wound. Other opposition parties have called this a political budget focused on upcoming assembly elections in Delhi and Bihar.
To taxpayers up to 12 lakh of income, other than special rate income such as capital gains, tax rebate is being provided in addition to the benefit in such a manner that there is no tax payable by them.
Modi government rolls out massive tax sops in budget for middle class and salaried sections, launching a pocket booster budget, announcing a series of welfare measures for Garib, Yuva, Annadata and Nari, putting special focus on poor and underprivileged.
In this budget, the proposed development measures span 10 broad areas, focusing on Garib, youth, Annadata and Nari, spurring agricultural growth and productivity, building rural prosperity and resilience, taking everyone together on an inclusive growth path.
While the BJP hailed the budget as path-breaking, the opposition is clearly unimpressed and called it hopeless and lacking focus.
ये जो बजट की विशेषता ये है कि हमारी इकोनॉमी को एक्सेलरेट करने वाला ये बजट है। जहां तक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को हर समय वित्त मंत्री प्राथमिकता देते हैं, इस समय भी हमारा बजट बढ़ा है, जिसके कारण इंफ्रा रोड सेक्टर में इसका बहुत बड़ा फायदा होगा।
Youth unemployment is particularly grim at the moment. We have the world record in youth unemployment and in college educated unemployed. So what is the method to generate jobs for these people?
I think this is a feel-good budget. This is one in which it will incur more spending. Infrastructure, the capex has gone up. If you look at the income tax, especially personal income tax, again it's a very massive increase from 7 lakhs to 12 lakhs.
We have lowered the middle class, but it is because of Delhi election, nothing else. Because last in Delhi, large number of people who are salaried people, working class, so they lower the votes. This is all the game they are playing.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi hailed the budget as empowering for the middle class and poor. He said that the Janta Janardhan budget fills pockets of all sections, while previous governments merely used the budget to fill their coffers.
आम तौर पर बजट का फोकस इस बात पर रहता है कि सरकार का खजाना कैसे भरेगा, देश के नागरिक विकास के भागीदार कैसे बनेंगे। ये बजट इसकी एक बहुत मजबूत नींव रखता है।
The budget comes just days ahead of Delhi polls. Will it end up influencing its outcome? Bureau Report, India Today.
Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas, Hardeep Puri, now joins us on this broadcast. Minister Puri, respond to the criticism we're seeing from the opposition about this budget. Rahul Gandhi calling this a band-aid for a bullet wound, saying the budget required a paradigm shift and the government is just doling band-aids. The Prime Minister, though, is calling it a Janta Ka Janardhan budget. But respond to what you're hearing from the opposition.
You know, I have the benefit of age on my side, and it is entirely possible that Rahulji knows neither the meaning of words, nor does he have even a nodding acquaintance with history. I want to take you back to the year 1974, when I started my working life, first as a lecturer in St. Stephen's College, and then as a member of the government when I joined the Foreign Service. 73 I started. And let me tell you, my basic pay was 400 rupees in those days. But I want to tell you another thing. The country was led by Rahulji's grandmother, Indira ji. And if you had a salary of, or you had an income of 12 lakhs of rupees then, you paid an income tax of 11 lakhs 29,000. In other words, this was in 1971, which was raised in 1973-74. So, you had a bizarre situation that you had a 97.5% of tax rate. Now, Rahulji is talking about a band-aid on a wound. I mean, I don't know, what is he talking about? When the Congress party handed over office to Moody ji, the income tax limit was 2.5 lakhs. That has been raised 5 times by us to take it to 12 lakhs. But earlier, even when it was 7 lakhs, if you had 1 rupee above that, you fell into a slab. Today, if you look at the more money, what Modi ji said today in a comment was the more money in your pocket is more power to the nation. So this has been welcomed widely by all sections of society. This budget is not just about income tax relief for the middle class or salaried people. This budget is a win-win and all. I want to draw Rahulji's attention to atomic energy. His government, or what the government he's a part of, they tried nuclear energy. They signed an India-US civilian nuclear energy deal. We got an India-specific safeguards agreement from the IAEA, but nothing happened, not a commercial. Today, we are in the happy situation to say we are resurrecting that. And nuclear energy will be used as a major platform and vehicle for our energy transition. See what's happening in critical minerals. That should have been done by Rahulji's party long back. See what's happening in critical energy, atomic energy, shipbuilding. What's happening in terms of the IITs expanding. And you know, it's been one of our sad things that we faced. The economy is growing, but the number of people employed in agriculture is very large. The contribution of agriculture to the GDP is less because they did not take the kind of steps we are taking today. Not only because of water, in terms of, you know, productivity increases, in terms of pesticide management and pulses, so many things. Equally for manufacturing. So there is an equal emphasis on manufacturing, agriculture, services, and more than that, also something that was overdue and which is dramatic, I think. A pay commission appointed by the cabinet, approved by the cabinet just before the budget, and the budget also bringing in this relief from 7 lakh to 12 lakhs.
You know, you've been active, Minister, in the Delhi elections. This announcement with relief for the middle-class taxpayer comes just ahead of Delhi going to polls. Are you hopeful that this would have a ripple rub-off on the Delhi voting numbers for your party as well?
I have maintained all along that till we get one nation, one poll, you're going to be having elections all the time. And it is quite evident that the middle class and salaried people don't exist just in Delhi. Delhi elections, by the way, if you go by Mr. Kejriwal's body language, and I'm a student of behavioral psychology, we had won the Delhi election earlier, or rather we are on the way to ousting him. There are few days left. All right, this is not Delhi specific, this is for the entire country. But if Kejriwal ji thinks or Rahul Gandhi thinks that this has got a Delhi, well, it applies to Delhi. Delhi is very much a part of India. If you provide relief to the agriculture sector, manufacturing sector, you can't say Delhi is excluded from it. And least of all, salaried people and middle class people who live in Delhi.
Professor Ramesh Chand joins us. He's a top expert in agriculture at the Niti Aayog. Professor Chand, there was an expectation of minimum support price by farmers in Punjab and elsewhere. There was no conversation in the budget about MSP. Instead, the government has tried to come up with various schemes, credit, incentives, to try and improve agricultural productivity. What's your take on the expectations of the farmers versus the delivery in this budget?
You see, MSP is already there, but in this budget also you find announcement of MSP for pulses. So when in this budget they are announcing pulses mission, the finance minister clearly mentioned that 3 pulses, Tud, Urd and one more pulse, that they will be procured from the farmer who will register themselves with the designated agency. So first of all, Rahul, in terms of MSP, we know that in case of pulses, we have PM Asha scheme, which is working in some states. So there's an announcement of MSP for pulses, and this country was expecting this kind of thing for those crops where you find countries deficit, countries trying to achieve sort of self-reliance. Coming to my overall sense of this budget, particularly for agriculture sector, I'm of the view that we have to reimagine role of agriculture in growth and development, sustainability, and many reasons. I have been writing on it. Even international opinion is also favoring that sort of thinking, that for a couple of reasons, we need to re-emphasize, rethink about role of agriculture. And I'm happy that economic survey also mentioned about agriculture being a growth driver, and this budget announced a couple of measures to give push to agriculture. My overall sense is, Rahul, that if you look at last 10 years, the growth rate of agriculture is unprecedented, close to 4%. That is what we used to keep as a target in 10th, 11th and 12th 5-year plan, and that is almost achieved. And this real prices of farm produce has also been rising almost 2% every year for last 8 to 10 years. And if you combine the two, the income of farm sector, according to my calculation, has been rising annually 5.5 to 6%. But causes concern is that if things are so good on price front, on growth front, why there is still concern or there is talk about distress being in agriculture sector, and that is what we diagnose, that in some of the states like Andhra, if overall growth rate of agriculture sector, you find more than 7%, but there are still pockets of field crops, farmers growing cereal, pulses, oil seeds, where growth rate is very, very low. So there is a need to identify those kind of regions where the growth rate is low, and I can share with you in some of the districts, growth rate is even 0. In some cases, it can be even negative, though at all India level, we have growth rate of close to 4%. So it was with that kind of background that the first announcement that identifying 100 districts and working and focusing on those districts to promote growth of agriculture there.
You make an important point about the variability in the growth being witnessed in the agricultural sector across different districts. Professor Ramesh Chand for joining us. Thank you. Top economic Pandit Shankar Iyer is with us in the studio. Shankar, you've been pouring through the budget numbers very carefully. What do you know now which you didn't know when you joined us in the morning? And what would you like to draw the attention of our viewers to?
I think the one question that I sort of have is that there was 11,000 crores allocated for infrastructure capex, public capex last year. Quite obviously, they didn't spend it, and that 1 lakh crore was unspent. This budget again puts it at 11.2 lakh crores. The budget, or at least in the post-budget, there should be some explanation as to what makes them so confident that they will achieve it this time when they couldn't last year.
But last time their explanation was that there was an election and there was a bit of a policy paralysis or decision-making being held in abeyance, contracts not being signed because they were all in a wait-and-watch kind of mode.
Well, this year they were going to be Bihar, which will again take the same
not
story.
as big as the general election. Small election, relatively speaking.
Fair enough. So my point is that these points of the gap between intent and outcome need to be explained in terms of what steps are being taken. The other aspect is that there are many schemes in the budget. It's virtually a menu card of ideas. If not in the budget speech, which is long as it is, at least in the follow-up, they should explain what is for what and how they're going to execute it. Because if the India story, the story of revival of the domestic markets and the domestic economy, the creation of jobs and incomes has to be done, then there must be what steps have you taken to execute the intent. So there is a gap between what the center thinks and what the states think. We tend to give a pass to all state governments on economic management, which seems to have been a tradition for over 30 years now. I think that should end, and there must be some method.
There is an intense amount of competition at the federal level between these states to attract investment.
Maybe 4 states or 5 states. Okay, there's Maharashtra, which is topping the FDI list. Tamil Nadu is actually competing with Vietnam for investment. But the large populous agrarian states, like in the morning I said, it's mystifying why Bihar, where Mr. Nitish Kumar has been chief minister for 20 years, I mean, he has a title of Suraj and everything. Why is no industry going there? Surely there are capable people in Bihar. Why are the students of Bihar fighting for exams and government posts? And the other thing is that all the allocations for health and education rest with the state governments. And state governments have failed to fill vacancies for teachers, for medical personnel.
Those are very important questions about the spends on public infrastructure and the need to spend also on human infrastructure and really build India, make India as you make in India. That is important. We're slipping into a break. We'll have many more top voices joining us. I'm expected to be joined by Minister Jyotiraditya Scindia in a while from now. Several leading voices from the opposition will be joining us. All this in a very short while from now. Coming up, once again, our coverage of Modynomics 25 on the other side of these messages.
Weather forecast now. Delhi, maximum 26 and minimum 11 degrees. Mumbai, maximum 25 and minimum 21 degrees. Kolkata, maximum 31 and minimum 20 degrees. Bangalore, maximum 30 and minimum 20 degrees. Chennai, maximum 28 and minimum 24 degrees. Hyderabad, maximum 33 and minimum 18 degrees.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
Puri.
हेलो, कौन है?
मैं वो हूँ जो हर साल बजट का इंतजार करता है। मैं वो हूँ जिसकी बीवी पूछती है कि आज खाना कैसे बनेगा।
अरे साफ साफ बोलो ना, तुम कौन हो?
आई एम जस्ट अ स्टूपिड कॉमन मैन।
अरे तुम चाहते क्या हो?
मैं चाहता हूँ कि आप मुझ जैसे स्टूपिड कॉमन मैन का ख्याल रखें।
देखो, मैं हर साल सस्ता करती हूँ ना सामान, सोना, कार, मोबाइल सब सस्ता करती हूँ ना, फिर क्या दिक्कत है?
अरे कभी दूध भी सस्ता करिए, कभी सब्जियां भी सस्ती करिए। मैं चाहता हूँ कि अगर मेरा बच्चा 100 रुपए घर से लेकर बाहर निकले तो झोला भर के राशन लेकर आए और उसके बाद भी 10 रुपए बच जाएं।
देखो, तुम अपनी बातों से मुझको मजबूर नहीं कर सकते हो।
अरे हमारी भी तो मजबूरी है मैडम, हमें भी तो घर चलाना होता है
और मुझे देश चलाना होता है। खैर परेशान मत हो, हम जरूर इन बातों का ख्याल रखेंगे।
हर बार यही सुनते हैं।
Co-presented by Kia Ceros, evolved by the future. Book now. Co-presented by Veka, India's largest selling UPVC window.
A force multiplier that will boost savings, investment and consumption. That's how Prime Minister Modi described the budget presented by Nirmala Sitharaman. Modi also praised the Finance Minister and her team for what he called a people's budget.
ये बजट न केवल देश की वर्तमान आवश्यकताओं को ध्यान में रखता है, बल्कि हमें भविष्य की तैयारी करने में भी मदद करता है। स्टार्टअप के लिए डीप टेक फंड, जियोस्पेशल मिशन और न्यूक्लियर एनर्जी मिशन ऐसे ही महत्वपूर्ण कदम है। मैं सभी देशवासियों को एक बार फिर इस ऐतिहासिक पीपल्स बजट की बधाई देता हूं और फिर एक बार वित्त मंत्री जी को भी बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं। अब इस बजट में 12 लाख रुपए तक की आय को टैक्स से मुक्त कर दिया गया है। सभी आय वर्ग के लोगों के लिए टैक्स में भी कमी की गई है। इसका बहुत बड़ा फायदा हमारे मिडिल क्लास को, नौकरी पेशे करने वाले जिनकी आय बंधी हुई है ऐसे लोगों को, मिडिल क्लास को इससे बहुत बड़ा लाभ होने वाला है। उसी प्रकार से जो नए नए प्रोफेशन में आए हैं, जिनको नए नए जॉब मिले हैं, इनकम टैक्स की ये मुक्ति उनके लिए एक बहुत बड़ा अवसर बन जाएगी। आमतौर पर बजट का फोकस इस बात पर रहता है कि सरकार का खजाना कैसे भरेगा, लेकिन ये बजट उससे बिल्कुल उल्टा है। लेकिन ये बजट देश के नागरिकों की जेब कैसे भरेगी, देश के नागरिकों की बचत कैसे बढ़ेगी। आमतौर पर बजट का फोकस इस बात पर रहता है कि सरकार का खजाना कैसे भरेगा, लेकिन ये बजट उससे बिल्कुल उल्टा है। लेकिन ये बजट देश के नागरिकों की जेब कैसे भरेगी, देश के नागरिकों की बचत कैसे बढ़ेगी और देश के नागरिक विकास के भागीदार कैसे बनेंगे, ये बजट इसकी एक बहुत मजबूत नींव रखता है। साथियों, इस बजट में रिफॉर्म की दिशा में महत्वपूर्ण कदम उठाए गए हैं।
I want to go across now live and exclusive to the Union Minister for Communications and the Development of the Northeast region. Jyotiraditya Scindia joins us live. Minister, welcome. You know, we were having this big raging conversation about why the government could not meet its target for spending on public infrastructure. You know, there's a big boost in the allocation for public infrastructure. Last year, the government couldn't achieve that target. And therefore, all the pundits in our studio and elsewhere are wondering, you know, A, the government needs to fully explain why that happened. What's the guarantee that the allocations that have been made this year will actually be realized? Welcome, sir.
So, Rahul, it's a pleasure to be on your show, and through you, my best wishes to all our viewers. This has been a landmark budget. It's a budget that very clearly defines that India is on her path to becoming a Atmanirbhar country, a country which is a Viksit country, a country that is going to grow into the third largest economy by 2027, from currently the fifth largest economy, an economy that's going to be a $5 trillion economy by 2026 and a $6.5 trillion economy by 2030. It's a budget that very clearly identifies the four pillars of that growth, and that is very clearly the Garib, the Annadata, the Yuva, and the Mahila. And the importance that has been given to agriculture, whether it's been through the 1.5 lakh crore credit increase for 7.17 crore farmers across the length and breadth of our country, or the oilseeds and pulses mission, the cotton mission, the makhana mission, and the investment into the economy, much what you talked about. The capex target that has been already met by December 31st is 10.8 lakh crores. The target for this year, of which there is still 3 months left, is 11 lakh crores. I am very confident that we will very comfortably meet that target. There's even a higher target that's been put for next year. There is a tremendous amount of importance being given to the current schemes to attain 100% saturation, such as the Har Ghar Nala Yojana, which will attain 100% saturation by 2028. Tremendous amount of focus on infrastructure, including roads, airports, Udan scheme, as well as the railways, and most importantly on technology, because technology is what's going to power the globe, and most importantly India to be a leader in that globe. And the telecom sector is going to play a huge role in that growth path. And therefore, I welcome wholeheartedly the Center of Excellence for AI, the funding of deep tech, a 10,000 crore fund being put together, and also the huge amount of reform on direct and indirect taxes. Never before in the history of our country have we seen a progressive tax regime that allows for a greater amount of income in the hands of our taxpayer, for him or her to take the decision between consumption, investment and savings. You've seen that happen for the first time in the last 10 years of Prime Minister Modi's rule, where from a 2.5 lakh level of tax exemption, we've gone successively to 5 lakhs in 2015, to 7.5 lakhs in 2019, to 9 lakhs in 2023, and now 12 lakhs. And similarly on the indirect tax regime, where we are going to cut it down to 8 slabs, including the 0% rate, come out with a simplified direct tax code. And most importantly, all of this keeping in mind fiscal prudence. We are ending up with a 4.8% fiscal deficit this year. The target for next year is 4.4%, which means a reduction of 400 basis points. Even though, Rahul, the FRBM talks about 4.5% for FY26. So we're actually 100 basis points below the FRBM target. So I'd like to, from the bottom of my heart, as a citizen of India, thank the Prime Minister and thank the Finance Minister for coming out with a most amazing budget that will propel India and all its citizens forward.
Shankar Iyer has a question for you, Mr.
Good evening, Mr. Scindia. Your department posts has a mention in paragraph 26 about being a catalyst for rural commerce and stuff. I had two questions. Why is the India Post still only a payment bank? It has more branches than most banks have. Why isn't it a full-fledged bank? And the second, post offices world over are being deployed as logistics company. Isn't it time we sort of liberated India Post from its old role and created it a logistic company, corporatized it, maybe list it? I mean, I remember writing about listing India Post maybe 20 years back, and we have still sort of crawled to the point where it is still a payments bank. I think it's a disservice to the spread, reach, and the potential of India Post that it continues to be only a payment bank.
So I think, Shankar, you're both right and you're wrong. Let me just clarify this for you. The India Post Payments Bank is a wholly owned subsidiary of India Post. It's only one of the verticals of India Post. The India Post Payments Bank has done a yeoman's job in the last 3 to 4 years of its inception. Let me give you some of the details on that. We were supposed to break even by FY 27-28. I'm glad to report to you that we have already broken even this year in the 9-month results between you and I as a post payments bank is concerned. We have close to about 11.5 crore customers as on date. To answer your query in terms of transforming into a full-fledged bank, you're very aware that the RBI has very strict regulations between what can be a commercial bank and what can be a post payments bank. And it's not that it's easy to fungibly twin both of those aspects. You cannot do that under the current regulatory regime. But having said that, as I mentioned, this is only one vertical of India Post. India Post is a most amazing organization. You're absolutely right. We have 1,65,000 points of sale. We are probably the largest distribution network, not in India, but the largest distribution network in the world. We have close to about 2.75 lakh Grameen Dak Sevaks, whose one mission in life is Dak Seva Jan Seva. This is the motto that I had evolved with them way back in 2008 when I was a Minister of State in this department. We are looking forward exactly on the lines that you're talking about. We have traced the path of many postal organizations across the world, from Japan Post to La Poste in France, to Royal Mail in the UK, to US Mail, to DHL in Germany. And we are looking, and that's why the Finance Minister talked about moving India Post into a logistics organization. We have made close to a 2-hour presentation to the Finance Minister. I'm in the process with the department of doing a business process restructuring exercise. We are coming out with our own software 2.0 product, which will digitize our whole system end-to-end seamless for our customer. Third, we are also coming out with a DigiPin code, which is very much like DigiYatra, which is what you experienced with me in civil aviation. So we are geocoding every single address across the length and breadth of this country. So when Shankar Iyer goes and resides in some place, that geocoded DigiPin address will be attributed to him. And when he moves out and Mr. Rahul Kanwal moves in, it will be then attributed to him. So these are all processes that we are putting in. We have 6 verticals. between life insurance, post office savings bank, parcels, mails, international mails, and citizen-centric services. We're looking at all of those 6 verticals, looking at the value chain for each, doing an operations exercise across all of them, consolidating a lot of their operations into hub and spoke. And I'd love to spend some time with you on this and with Rahul in terms of what we've got cooking at India Post. So we have great plans for the next couple of years. We are today a cost center for the government of India, and it's our hope in the next 5 years to turn it hopefully into a profit center for government of India.
I hope you list it. I hope it will be listed. I hope it will be listed like all the good public sector units like State Bank of India and LIC and all.
I mean, having... that's certainly our ambition, but I think it's important not to put the cart before the horse. Having been an investment banker in my last life, I think it's very important to come out with a value proposition and a product. And once you're able to do that, then the listing is, it's an eventuality. It has to happen.
One last question before you let me go, Minister Scindia. Your government speaks of a Viksit Bharat by 2047 that requires a real GDP growth rate of at least 8% plus. The government set a target of 6.3 to 6.8% of growth for next year. Why was the government not more ambitious in taking a bigger target and then doing what was required to try and achieve it? If we grow at 6.4% this year, 6.3 to 6.8 next year, then we're not going to achieve that target that your Prime Minister, that our Prime Minister and this government has set for itself.
So Rahul, how do I satisfy you? With you, I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't. I think it's important for you, Rahul, to go back to do a little bit of research and look at how economies across the world have transformed themselves. The power of growing into a economic powerhouse is not necessarily rates of growth themselves, but is the power of compounding. If you look at the United States of America, has grown at average of 2.5–3%, but it's grown at that rate for 100 years, which is what has transformed the United States of America. If you look at India's growth rate in perspective with the rest of the world, in the last fiscal has grown at roughly between 2.5 to 2.75% across the world. India has grown at 6.8%. So we've grown at close to about 4,000 basis points above the world. Yes, we have aspirations. Yes, we will deliver on those aspirations for you and for our country. That's our commitment and that's our resolve. But I think it's also important to be realistic, and I think it's important to ensure that you are able to deliver on whatever you have promised. And therefore, when I talked about the growth rate, when I talked about the fiscal deficit, these are realistic numbers which shall be met by our government.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Minister Jyotiraditya Scindia for joining us. Thank you very much. You have an interesting plan on what you hope to do with India Post. It will be fascinating to see how it plays out on the ground. Thank you for taking out time, sir.
Thank you so much, Rahul. Pleasure. Thank you.
I want to go across now to Dr. Sangeeta Reddy, Joint Managing Director at Apollo Hospitals. Lots of announcements around basic customs duty on some life-saving drugs coming down, and the overhang of Donald Trump threatening tariffs against Indian pharma companies. That again likely to play out over the next few weeks and months. So how are you decoding everything that we heard from the budget and what we're seeing Donald Trump threaten to do against India?
So, Rahul, I think that this budget is one that, number one, continued the path of ensuring that healthcare was accessible and affordable for everyone. So the life-saving drugs, the customs duty reduction on that, the fact that primary healthcare centers would get digital connectivity and therefore can take the benefit of telemedicine, telehealth, increasing the entire aspect of cancer care. So 200 district headquarters getting cancer care maybe to do chemotherapy. This scheme, I think, is in line with what was done with dialysis, where over 25 lakh people get the benefit of free dialysis. So lots of very good schemes. The big one, I think, is the enhancement of the medical number of doctors to correct the ratio between, the lack of doctors, especially in rural areas, and something that I think acknowledges the power of the private sector and the capability of the private sector is the focus on medical value travel, or as the Prime Minister likes to say, and Dr. Reddy, our chairman, also says, which is Heal in India. So Heal in India is a powerful recognition of the fact that Indian healthcare provides world-class outcomes at 1/10 of global prices. And it also understands the fact that the global medical value sector is estimated to be over $130 billion. So, and there's a global healthcare worker shortage. Considering these factors, a channel is being opened up to use the power of the private sector's capability, but to remove all the roadblocks. Visas are a problem, connectivity is a problem. So if those get organized under a Heal in India initiative, this sector could really grow the numbers that we're currently performing. So overall, for this year, I think it was a good budget.
You didn't answer my question about the threat of tariffs against Indian pharma companies and the impact that could have on the healthcare sector and particularly on generic pharma exports.
So I think I'm banking on 2 or 3 things. Number one, the value proposition of the Indian pharma is very strong. And number 2, it's assumed that the Modi-Trump relationship is strong. So I'm banking on those 2 to sail us through this difficult situation. And all of us know the unpredictability of the global citizen that you're referring to. Let's hope that good sense prevails and business continues.
So you're hoping there's just a negotiating tactic and in the end, the Modi-Trump bonhomie carries the day. Sangeeta Reddy, for joining us with your thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rahul. Good talking to you.
I want to go across to Mukesh Bhutani. He's a managing partner at BMR Legal, leading tax expert. Everybody very excited about, the prospects of more money on the table in the wallets of middle-class taxpayers. But what's the fine print that you want viewers to be aware of? And more importantly, how much of a genuine reduction do you think this is likely to be for people? And how do you assess the money that's left is most likely going to be spent? Whether it's going to be saved, consumed, buying new things or invested? What's your reading?
Well, Rahul, first of all, the headline is that there has been a 6-fold increase in the minimum threshold of exemption limit in the last 11 years. So even if you factor in the inflation, it's overall liberal. And if you factor in the changes that were announced today morning, it's far more liberal because, and it's packaged very well, by the way. So though the threshold is 4 lakh to 8 lakh income still attracts a 5% rate of tax. You may have heard the finance minister talk about the figure of 12 lakh rupees. Now, this 12 lakh has an inbuilt assumption that you are able to avail of all the benefits and the rebates. So in case a taxpayer avails of all the rebates and benefits, 12 lakh is the limit, number one. Number 2, there is a new rate of tax being introduced from, as you're showing it in your screen, there wasn't a 25% rate of tax which has been introduced for income between 20 to 24 lakhs. The other headline is that what attracted the maximum marginal rate of 30% for income above 15 lakhs is now 24 lakhs. So overall, there is going to be benefit. The benefit ranges from 75,000 to 180,000, depending on which class of taxpayer is it appealing to. And that is hopefully going to put in more money in the pockets of the taxpayer. Hopefully, that will bolster consumption and push up the demand as well, which, as you know, in the FMCG sector has been lagging for the 3rd consecutive quarter.
The finance minister also spoke of coming up with a direct tax code this week or next. From everything that you've heard from the finance minister and by reading the finance bill, what are the indications that you're picking up about what to expect? They're saying it will be much simpler, but how much simpler and what should our viewers really expect?
Well, we have to remember that we are still working on the 1961 code. Many of the sections have become redundant. Law has been repealed. So one important exercise, which is a cleanup exercise, is all about weeding out the old sections. That is also what she was saying, that the code is going to look simpler, lucid, avoid litigation, and more importantly, it's going to cut down the size by 50%. I think the other important indicator that the businesses, particularly the small and medium enterprises, are looking at it is that it's going to reduce litigation. Now, one of the indicators was that there has been a curtain of judgments that have been rendered by the High Court and the Supreme Court. Many of those judgments would, in a way, find its way as having accepted in the code. So which means that if in future tax officials or the courts are interpreting the code, it will factor in and have the benefit of all those judgments. So simplicity, lucidness, smallness in size, and reducing litigation are the four corners for the new tax code that you will see, hopefully by way of a bill in within a week. However, given the importance of this fiscal legislation, it's likely to go to a standing committee of Parliament and unlikely that it will be implemented before April 1, 2026. That's the earliest that citizens can expect a new tax code.
Finally, they also spoke of cutting down on regulatory compliance as a committee being set up. How do you see that play out, the kind of time frame and the implementation pathway to actually get the recommendations out and then start implementing them?
Well, there are there is one committee and there is one independent body. The one committee, and it's unclear whether it's an independent committee, is going to focus on regulatory aspects of non-financial sector. Review actually processes, licenses, permissions. This is with a view to address red tape and bureaucracy that often slows down and frustrates businesses. The second is a committee that's going to look at the financial reforms. Now, bear in mind, Rahul, that whether they are financial sector reforms or non-financial sector reforms, all of these recommendations, when translated, will result in a host of legislative changes. Our economic legislations are spread across 50 or probably 100 laws. So you're looking at a complete revamp. It's going to be a time-consuming exercise, but at least the committee will set out a guide path for the future as to what are the changes that would expect. Now, this is over and above piecemeal changes that are being carried out. For example, decriminalization of certain offenses. We saw today also in the finance bill, decriminalization of TCS. So that's an ongoing exercise, but a major overhaul is being looked at for both the financial and non-financial sector.
Okay, we'll leave it there for the time being. Thank you very much, Mr. Bhutani, for joining us. Appreciate your thoughts. That's Mukesh Bhutani sharing his perspective on the impact that the direct tax code could have and also the extra money that everybody has because of the change in the tax structure. Thank you very much for joining us. This is important, Shankar. The fact that there's so much focus on easing regulations, it may not happen immediately. There may be some time before it happens. But if the government can walk the talk and actually get it done, it will be doing yeoman service to everybody who does business in India.
Well, walk the talk is the operative term here. About 3 or 4 years back, the government put together a panel and a cell which looks at litigation by government. The government is the largest litigant in the country. And it's still not all the departments have come on board, not all the state governments have come on board. I hope that this committee, which is looking at some of these issues on processes, sort of looks at it. On specifically the direct tax bill, I hope that somebody recognizes that India is probably the only country where the ruling by one income tax officer, the department appeals against it. It's completely bizarre. I mean, the department is ruling against itself.
Sure. I'm joined at this time by senior Congress leader, member of parliament from Chandigarh, former Union Minister Manish Tiwari joins us on this broadcast. Manish ji, welcome. The government's big idea was to change the tax slabs, leave more money in the wallets of middle-class taxpayers. They're cheering this budget, quite delighted that the middle class has got something finally to cheer about. And that seems to be the government's drive, really, to try and boost consumption by leaving more money for people to go out and spend in different ways that you want. As the leading voice of the Indian opposition, how are you reading Finance Minister Sitharaman's 8th budget?
Well, Rahul, if you were to look at the big numbers of the budget, the needle does not seem to have moved because the fiscal deficit still remains in the region of about 15.5 lakh crores. In fact, it was 15,69,527 lakh crores in the revised budget estimates for 24-25. And for the next year, it's 15,68,936 crores. So the needle really has not moved on the fiscal deficit at all. In terms of the government going to the market in order to fulfill this budgetary deficit, again, does not doesn't seem to have moved because about 11 lakh crores was mobilized last year. In fact, 11,62,678 crores. And for 25-26, the figure is at 11,53,834 crores. So essentially, when the government is going to the market to borrow such large sums of money, it squeezes the private sector out when it comes to accessing institutional finance in order to spur their own investment plans. Coupled with that, the total debt of the government has gone up exponentially to 190 lakh crores. It's up from 55 lakh crores odd in 2014-15 to 190 lakh crores, which is almost 140 lakh crores addition to the total debt and liabilities of the government. Now, government may argue that in terms of the debt to GDP ratio, we are still within the guardrails. But in absolute numbers, this is a worrying number. So therefore, if you were to step back a little and really look at the macro picture, including the fact that the lowering of corporate income tax rates in 2019-2020, which was supposed to spur private investment, even that has not happened because the largest number in terms of where the rupee comes from is still from borrowings, and personal income tax collections, trump the corporate income tax collections, corporation tax. So essentially, if you look at the big picture still remains worrying. And more importantly, the caution administered by the chief economic advisor does not seem to have been reflected in the budget, wherein he said that government needs to get out of the way, that in this country, the process is the punishment. You are guilty unless you prove yourself innocent.
No, but why are you saying that? Because the finance minister said, Manishji, that they'll come up with a new tax code which is 50% less cumbersome than the last tax code, the existing tax code. They're also talking about setting up committees to drastically reduce regulations. So at least the government is attempting to walk down that path. It may be slow and cumbersome, but there seems to be an effort being made in that direction to try and make it easier to do business in India.
Well, 10 years is a long time, Rahul, to essentially go down that path. And to go back to the point which Mr. Shankar Iyer was making before I came onto the show, that income tax is probably the only department which repeatedly appeals against the orders of its own assessing officers. And the appeal does not end with the first appellate authority, that is the Commissioner Appeals, but goes all the way up to the ITAT, to the High Court, to the Supreme Court. In fact, as someone who was litigating at one point in time on behalf of the government, I can say that the maximum backlog which is there in the courts with regard to income tax or direct tax matters is because of government litigation. And that does not seem to have changed in the past 10 years.
Manish Tiwari ji, for joining us with your thoughts. Thank you very much. Senior Congress leader, Member of Parliament from Chandigarh, Manish Tiwari sharing his critique of the Union budget. I want to go across now live and exclusive to Ashwini Vaishnav, Minister for Information Broadcasting, Electronics, IT and Railways. So he's got a very, very big portfolio. I have very little time, so I'll try and get straight to it. The big idea that you have is that there is a a lot of allocation around AI related schemes, some 4,349.75 CR. And you were leading the Indian contingent in Davos, Minister, and you've been talking about India coming up with its own large language model. My concern is, particularly on the back of what we've seen from China through DeepSeek, why is India as a tech ecosystem and why is our government late on this? Aren't we at least 12 to 24 months late? The Chinese have already done, one small Chinese company has already done what you're now setting out to do. So why are we behind the curve on this? Minister, welcome, sir.
Hi, Rahul. See, for developing a foundational model or testing algorithms, we need the compute power. Getting that compute power was a very important part of our India AI mission. That's why immediately after getting the India AI mission approved last year, we set out to get the compute power working with the private sector. And we created a very interesting PPP model by which the private sector has invested in the compute capacity, and that compute capacity has been offered via government to the entrepreneurs, to startups, to academicians, to researchers, so that they can use the compute power for developing algorithms, testing models, creating models, training them. And against a target of 10,000 GPUs, we've got 18,000 GPU as the empaneled capacity. And we are going to do this every quarter. So that means we'll have a very significant compute capacity. And now that we have the compute capacity, we can quickly start the foundational model work. In fact, we have been working on creating models, and some very nice, interesting models are already in application. Already they are being used. For example, in railway, for increasing the confirmed ticket booking, we have been using for last 10 months a model which basically has increased the railway reservation by almost 27%. Same is the case of using models in the kitchens, in cleanliness, in multiple ways. And many more sectors are using. The other day, Mr. Bajaj was telling how he is using it in the insurance industry. In multiple ways, the models have been in use. So I think it's.
So you understood my question and yet you weaved an answer around it. So I'll just do it again. You know, a lot of this is use cases of artificial intelligence and the focus on small language models. As our IT minister, I'm curious to know your thoughts on the fact that a Chinese company working on its own, using far less computational power than, say, OpenAI or, say, Google Gemini, has been able to create something which really upends a lot of original assumptions about how AI models were built. So, and you're also studying deep tech very, very carefully. So as our IT minister, how are you responding to these developments we're seeing from China, sir?
This is very interesting, Rahul, and you are absolutely right. The progress in AI models will come from algorithmic efficiency. New algorithms, new ways of using computer, new ways of parallelly using multiple GPUs which are having lesser compute capacity and still being able to generate that much computational power. All those engineering as well as algorithmic advances are something which will drive the AI world, and the entire industrial world, the entire computer world has been driven by similar stuff in the past. So I do think that this is a very big advancement. Yes, of course, at this point of time, our experts are studying the entire, the technical papers which have been published by DeepSeek. They are studying it, but on the top of it, on the first look basis, I would say that this is a major advancement in algorithms.
Sir, we have so many big IT companies. I don't want to name anyone because this is not about any one company, but are you disappointed with the fact that this didn't happen with an Indian, because we've got a flourishing startup ecosystem. In China, it happened with a very small company which was earlier into hedge funds. So are you frankly just disappointed that this kind of an innovation didn't happen in India, that we were busy building use cases of artificial intelligence rather than trying to build the foundational cores?
No, absolutely not, Rahul. See, these are changes which happen over a course of time, and our industry has been taking the lead in using AI for creating services, right? We have seen the growth of our IT services. IT services is playing a very important role in the entire global economy. The same approach the entire IT industry was taking of creating AI-based services where India's potential, India's talent can be utilized for providing services in India and across the world. And there is a big set of researchers also in some of the IITs, some NITs and some of the startups who have been looking at practically all the scientific papers. For example, in this case also, in the case of DeepSeek, one of the research papers which they have used for the algorithmic efficiency, for the new algorithm of mixture of experts, some of our researchers have been studying that. So the whole point is we must have that compute facility to be able to do things at a level of creating the foundational model, and that focus, that clear focus on getting the compute facility, that has that has gone down well. And now with the compute capacity, now we can really accelerate our work on creating the foundational models.
Okay, Shankar Iyer has a question for you. Shankar.
Hello, Minister. This is a question I have, just the curiosity that a lot of people say. Rahul was asking why India's IT companies have not been able to do, and several people have exchanged messages on the day DeepSeek was launched and the news came out that how come India's Jugaad expertise and how come India's techno expertise have not come together. Now, that question was posed to DeepSeek, and DeepSeek said because India invests far too little on R&D, has fewer scientists than China, and all those things. My question is a little one step away from this. Now, we know that Google Alphabet is used, almost 40% of its algos are now being coded by the machine. In India's largest white-collar employer is the IT services. India's largest exports under you, $250 billion, has been the IT services. How worried are you that AI might disrupt both the employment and the export potential of India?
Precisely for this reason, we have focused a lot on getting the AI services to put into use so that our IT industry can kind of transition from the traditional IT services, the way they transition from BPO services to very deep IT services to GCC-based design services to AI-based services, right? So that's the transition which has happened over the past few decades. And that's why the IT industry was quite focused on getting into the AI services business model rather than focusing on the foundational model. So the transition has to be smooth. And no transition is ever like the way it should. There's no ideal transition, right? Every transition will have its ups and downs. And from the industry perspective, what we should be looking at is how to make it as less painful, as smooth as we can.
I know this question of mine will get me into a lot of trouble with my classmates who are all IIT grads, but what exactly do India's GCCs do that inoculates it from the disruption?
Very important point, and I'll give a very frank answer to it without taking any names, right? Pardon me, I'm not taking any names. I know I personally visited a couple of GCCs where the Indian talent is today actually talking to the customers, understanding the requirement of the chipset, right? That's the most important, most difficult part of entire chip development, the fabless community, right? That's one of the most important points. Once you go, then from there you create what should be the architecture, which libraries should be used, how should we look at the entire picture, how would this chip be used in the final product, what would be the use cases, what will be the getting to that, then actually getting to the chip design, the hardcore design, and then sending it out for taping to one of the fabs. So that is something which is like complete value chain. Complete value chain. I'll give one more example. Designing a new motor. Now, that's a very specific task, and especially when it is a motor which has to be designed for extreme conditions of temperature, right? Understanding the temperature, the ambient conditions, the design requirements, then translating those into specifications, then doing the actual design work, and then getting the motor manufactured, the prototype tested, all that stuff, right? That entire value chain. This is today being done by GCCs. This is something very, very fundamental to every engineering, every industrial, every technology-based industry. This is very complex, very difficult. Imagine where we have moved from a BPO to, as I said, from BPO to coding to actually getting into design work to having complete GCCs to now we move to AI-based services, right?
Sir, you've now spoken of the need of a sovereign AI, and you've set out 10,000 odd crore rupees for this. By when do you see an AI model fully built in India coming together? You're now working towards it. By when do you see this reaching fruition?
In a few months, we have been working on it for some time now, multiple options and multiple teams working on it. And in a few months, we can see it. Because we needed compute power. That compute power is there now.
So also on your other pet project, which is of chip manufacturing in India, what's the latest update that you can share with our viewers in terms of us being able to build our own chips within India and actually start catching up with the world in this very crucial sphere?
Absolutely. The 3 years of India semiconductor mission have been very satisfying. We have been able to bring the ecosystem into our country and starting a nascent industry where the complexity level is very, very high. In that kind of situation, within a short time frame, our Prime Minister's clear vision of getting the ecosystem into place rather than just focusing on the fab or just getting, just focusing on one part of the entire value chain. He always told us that look at the entire picture and look at a long term growth in this sector. That has given us very good results. All the 5 units, the construction work is going on at very good pace. Some places the equipment setting, the equipment installation is right now happening. The validation of equipment is happening. And this year in 2025 calendar year, we should be seeing the first Made in India chip rollout. 2026, we should see 2 more projects being commissioned, and 2027 we should see all these 5 projects ready, up and running, producing chips, using in our industry, using in some of the world's most complex, some of the marquee industries in the world. So this is very satisfying, and now we are seeing. So, for example, again, I won't take any name. One of the largest equipment manufacturers, which got the confidence on this program, they set up their first plant, and they've increased their production capacity from 2 bays to 5 bays, and now they are looking at a much larger manufacturing facility here for the equipment. The chemical guys, one of the big chemical companies, met me at Davos, and they said that we are very convinced about India's story, and we have decided to set up the complete, the entire spectrum of these very, very specialty chemicals, very special gases and chemicals. They have decided to set up the entire chain here. And they say that, yes, this will be for India and for the world. So that kind of approach, Rahul, that is the progress. And yes, it will require huge amount of effort. It's not that semiconductor industry is an easy industry. It's a very difficult industry. And we are determined to make it success.
You're also Minister for Railways. Former Finance Minister Chidambaram has critiqued the outlay towards railways, saying it's gone up only by 766 crore rupees, which doesn't even, he says, claims covers inflation. Not happy with the fact that railways should have got a higher allocation. So as Railways Minister, your key message to viewers about what kind of substantive improvements should passengers and citizens expect from the railways this year?
I wish Dr. Chidambaram should have compared the allocation with the allocation that he would have made when he was the Finance Minister. He would have made an allocation of some 20,000 crore, right? And this is 2,52,000 crore today. So, and that's the optimum level of investment that we require to make in railway year after year, right? We should not be looking at things in pulses, in cycles. We should be looking at consistent growth. And that's more important than looking at the comparison with the previous year. This allocation is the optimum allocation, I'm saying, with a lot of humility and a lot of responsibility, and we should maintain this level rather than go too much up or go too much down. Because railway projects require 3 to 4 years of work, 1.5 years, 2 years of planning and designing and getting the land and everything in shape, then 3 to 4 years of construction work. So that's why the cycle is long. That's why we must have the consistency. In the current budget, we have about 4,60,000 crore rupees worth new projects and new works approved, which includes new lines, doubling, tripling, gauge conversion, upgrading the existing rolling stock, upgrading the railway tracks, 10,000 locomotives we are right now fitting with Kavach. We will be manufacturing 50 new Namo trains, Namo Bharat trains, which is for short distance, 200 new Vande Bharat trains, which is for medium distance, 100 new Amrit Bharat trains, which are for long distances. We'll be doing about 1,000 new flyovers and underpasses, which is again, we made a record a couple of years, or rather the last financial year when we constructed 1,000 flyovers and underpasses in one single year. And that pace is continuing now. That momentum is up. In fact, our capex of the current fiscal is already 80% plus by the end of January. So that momentum is being maintained very well, and a lot of focus on safety. Last year we had budgeted 1,08,000 crore, but we are actually investing 1,14,000 crore on safety. In the next fiscal, we'll be investing 1,16,000 crore on safety, and we'll also be achieving 3 major milestones. The first milestone is 1.6 billion tons of cargo will be touching this year. Second milestone, 3 lakh crore revenue will be touching. Third milestone, 100% electrification will be touching. And despite all the constraints, we are meeting all the costs, the cost of salary, which is 1,07,000 crore, the cost of pension, which is about 66,000 crore, the cost of energy, which is 32,000 crore, the cost of maintenance of the rolling stock, which is about 8,000 crore, the cost of maintenance of tracks and others, which is about 15,000 crore. The entire cost of operating the system, we are able to now meet from the revenue and break even. Even if the amount is small, there is a break even now already in place.
We'll leave it there. Minister Ashwini Vaishnav for joining us. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to go across next to N.K. Singh, Chairperson of the 15th Finance Commission of India. And I've just received this outlook from Moody's, and I want to take our viewers through it and then get Mr. Singh to react. As the government unveiled its budget for 25-26 amid a somewhat dampened macroeconomic backdrop as compared to recent years, it had to slow the pace of fiscal consolidation to provide firmer support to growth. In particular, announced tax relief measures have constrained the growth of revenue receipts, which will rise at its slowest pace since 22-23. As such, falling expenditure as a share of GDP has borne the brunt of projected narrowing of the fiscal deficit. The most crucial part of the Moody outlook is that India's fiscal strength will remain weaker than most of its investment-grade peers. So, although the Union government remains on track to meet its near-term policy goals, we do not expect a sufficient improvement in the debt burden or the proportion of the budget earmarked for debt servicing to change our broader assessment, Mr. Singh, that India's fiscal strength will remain weaker than most of its investment-grade peers. Now, the government's big hope, frankly, was that Moody's and other rating agencies will upgrade India's outlook. The initial report that's been put out by Moody's seems to think that that may not be happening anytime soon. The government's big hope, frankly, was that Moody's and other rating agencies will upgrade India's outlook. The initial report that's been put out by Moody's seems to think that Mr. N.K. Singh? Can you hear me, sir?
I can hear you.
Okay. So my question to you was on credit rating agency. I hear you well, sir. Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
Right, I have got your question.
Super.
May I respond to it now?
Please do.
Okay, so I think that when this question has been raised, I also heard very carefully the last part of what Manish Tiwari had said as a spokesman for the opposition. I wish that a few minutes was given to read the page 12 of the macroeconomic policy statement which the finance minister has laid out. The two charts which are there on page 12 of that macroeconomic statement clearly shows two very important trends. The first and foremost, that fiscal deficit having reached, for the central government alone, over 9%, has come down progressively to the daunting challenge of 4.5%. Equally, if you look at the trajectory of the debt of the central government, the debt which had really risen to absurd limits is planned to come down to just 50% by 31-32. The rating agencies will all take note of this important fact of a growth, not only sustained growth, manageable inflation, declining fiscal deficit, but most importantly, as you correctly said, a declining path on the debt to GDP coming down in a progressive way. Of course, I agree that perhaps in absolute terms, even at 50%, would be somewhat higher than the trajectory which I had given as the chairman of the Fiscal Responsibility Management Review Committee, which was 40% for the central government and 20% for the states. But we had the pandemic after that. But notwithstanding the pandemic, now the deficit of the debt to GDP of the central government is coming down every year to just above 50%. What is really necessary, if I may say so, is that this is of the central government, because the World and Rating Agency looks at not only the central government, they look at what is known as the general government. And therefore you need to add the debt and the fiscal numbers of the state governments. And that is going to be requiring a degree of partnership and ability of the state governments to partner with the central government, both in terms of the fiscal glide path and, more importantly, the downward trajectory on the debt.
But the opposition's critique, and I want you to respond to it, is that the fiscal deficit, government spending numbers are being met by not spending, that on important schemes, and I think Mr. Chidambaram said it in his press conference, that on production-linked incentive, on Skill India, crop insurance scheme, on spending on public infrastructure, the government made these announcements, you didn't spend the money, and therefore that's how the fiscal deficit target has been met. How do you respond to Chidambaram?
No, I think that Mr. Chidambaram should look at his own record, and he should look at the fact that the quality of public expenditure has dramatically changed in the Modi era as compared to the kind of record which he had, namely whether as a component of the fiscal deficit, the revenue expenditure was exceedingly high. One of the very creative features of the Modi's management of the finances has been that the capital expenditure as a proportion of the overall revenue expenditure has gone up very, very significantly. We all know, it doesn't require an explanation, that capital expenditure has multiplier benefits over any other kind of revenue expenditure. And therefore, I think we need to also, in addition to the fiscal trajectory and the debt trajectory, recognize the change in the composition of expenditure moving towards larger capital expenditure.
Very briefly, what kind of a multiplier are you expecting from the changes in the income tax slabs and the relief that's been given to the taxpayer, and the impact this could potentially have on spurring growth?
So I think that, well, having been part of the Revenue Department for long, when I served in the Ministry of Finance, I think that what these tax slabs will do is it will dramatically improve the urge for compliance. And therefore, I believe that the revenue buoyancy will go up rather substantially. It has been quite an effort to keep the buoyancy at 1. I see that with these new tax slabs and the new income tax code, which is coming into vogue next week, as she said, I see the rising trend on revenue buoyancy too, which will really enable the government to meet its daunting fiscal challenge and its rising expenditure trend.
Okay, we leave it there. N.K. Singh, thank you for joining us. Whether the rationalization leads to additional tax buoyancy, it will be interesting to see if that pans out in the end. For joining us with your sharp insights, thank you very much. Chairperson of the 15th Finance Commission, veteran bureaucrat N.K. Singh.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're slipping into a quick break. We'll have many more key voices from the government, the opposition, corporate India joining us when we come back on the other side of a very quick break. Stay with us.
इन्वेस्टमेंट की रेगुलर इंफॉर्मेशन मिलती है क्या?
लेते हुए हाथ ऊपर जोड़।
बिल्कुल। पूछ, विड्रॉ करने के बाद पैसे कितने टाइम में मिलते हैं?
सुन सवाल चंद, म्यूचुअल फंड सही है .com पर लॉगिन कर, वहां तेरे सारे सवालों के जवाब मिल जाएंगे, समझा?
सही है फिर। कौन सी वेबसाइट?
म्यूचुअल फंड सही है .com।
सही है।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार जोखिमों के अधीन है। योजना से जुड़े सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
Hey Google, how do I do a wing liner? AI Ray. Flip the script with the new Motorola Razr 50 series.
Hello Moto.
म्यूचुअल फंड है मैच की तरह, कभी रन रेट ऊपर, कभी थोड़ा सा नीचे।
शानदार शॉट सीधे वर्मा जी के गैलरी।
म्यूचुअल फंड्स की पिच पर जितना टाइम टिका रहेगा, फायदा होने के चांसेस उतने बढ़ेंगे।
सही है।
म्यूचुअल फंड्स में पेशेंस रखना सही।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार जोखिमों के अधीन है। योजना से जुड़े सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
Motorola Razr 50 Ultra comes with Google Gemini.
Hi, I am AI anchor Sana, bringing the top headlines for you, presented by Motorola. Major push for regional air connectivity in Union Budget, 88 airports to link small cities. PM Narendra Modi praises Union Budget, says it will fulfill the aspirations of 140 crore Indians. Akali Dal MP Harsimrat Kaur Badal slams Union Budget, calls it anti-farmer.
Sounded. Small state, big heart and bigger political dividends. This is no ordinary election. Delhi doesn't just vote, it challenges.
जहाँ धूल मिट्टी इतना है, खड्डे हैं।
It questions.
सांसद रहे 5 साल से क्या किया है आपने? Delhi living in a literal virtual gas chamber.
It decides the narrative for the nation.
We are the only revenue surplus government in the country.
As the battle unfolds on the 5th and the verdict echoes on the 8th, we're here to bring it all to you. This is State of War Delhi.
presented by Kia Ceros, evolved by the future. Book now. Co-presented by Veka, India's largest selling UPVC window.
Hello and welcome. You're watching India Today's coverage on Budget Day. We're dissecting the fine print of the Union Budget, trying to make sense of how this impacts your life and the impact this can have on India's growth story. Let me take you through the headlines. I'm practicing. Big relief for middle and salaried class in the budget. No income tax, still an annual income of 12 lakh rupees under the new tax regime. A nil tax slab increase from 7 to 12 lakh rupees. PM hails Janta Janardhan budget, says tax relief will extend to all income groups. Prime Minister says other governments looted citizens. His government is putting money in their pockets.
बजट का फोकस इस बात पर रहता है कि सरकार का खजाना कैसे भरेगा, लेकिन ये बजट उससे बिल्कुल उल्टा है.
Big focus on pole-bound Bihar in the Union budget, capacity expansion of Patna Airport, no greenfield airports to come up, a Makhana board to be set up for farmers too. Modi government waives off custom duty on 36 life-saving drugs, 200 cancer daycare centers to be set up in district hospitals, electric vehicle and mobile batteries set to get cheaper. Opposition unimpressed by Modinomics. Congress says the government is bankrupt of ideas. DMK alleges it's a Bihar budget with southern states being ignored. The Prime Minister saw Ma Lakshmi's blessings for the middle class yesterday. Today, the goddess of wealth was shining on the taxpayers. There's been substantial relief for the tax-paying Aam Aadmi in the budget. The Prime Minister's government announced that individuals earning up to 12 lakh rupees annually will now be exempt from income tax, a notable increase from the earlier threshold of 7 lakh rupees. The question, of course, is the extent to which this will stimulate domestic demand amidst the global economic uncertainties.
मैं मां लक्ष्मी से प्रार्थना करता हूं कि देश के हर गरीब एवं मध्यम वर्ग समुदाय पर मां लक्ष्मी की विशेष कृपा रहे.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi hoping for Ma Lakshmi's blessing for India's middle class and poor ahead of the budget. And on Saturday, the goddess of wealth seems to have showered her grace on the middle and salaried class. The middle class, which often complains of tax burden, had a major respite coming its way when Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman announced no income tax on income up to 12 lakh rupees per annum, up from 7 lakh rupees per year.
I am now happy to announce that there will be no income tax payable up to income of 12 lakh rupees.
The built-in rebate of 60,000 rupees under Section 87A and relief in tax slabs makes incomes up to 12.75 lakh tax-free if you are a salaried individual.
In the new tax regime, I propose to revise tax rate structures as follows: 0 to 4 lakh rupees nil, 4.8 lakh rupees to 4 to 8 lakh rupees 5%, 8 to 12 lakh rupees 10%, 12 to 16 lakh rupees 15%, 16 to 20 lakh rupees 20%, 20 to 24 lakh rupees 25%, and above 24 lakh rupees 30%.
Prime Minister Modi hailed it as a budget which will put extra money in pockets across all income groups.
अब इस बजट में 12 लाख रुपए तक की आय को टैक्स से मुक्त कर दिया गया है. सभी आय वर्ग के लोगों के लिए टैक्स में भी कमी की गई है। इसका बहुत बड़ा फायदा हमारे मिडिल क्लास को, नौकरी पेशे करने वाले जिनकी आय बंधी हुई है ऐसे लोगों को, मिडिल क्लास को इससे बहुत बड़ा लाभ होने वाला है।
Those earning 12 lakh rupees and above will get 80,000 rupees tax benefit. Those earning 18 lakh rupees and above will get 70,000 rupees tax benefit. While those in the slab of 25 lakh rupees income and above will get a tax benefit of 1,10,000 rupees.
पहली बार इतना उत्साहित तरीके से लोग स्वागत किया है बजट को। मैं प्रधानमंत्री जी को आभार प्रकट करता हूं और निर्मला सीतारमण जी को भी मैं धन्यवाद देता हूं। बहुत खूबसूरत बजट दिया है और चाहे किसान हो, मिडिल क्लास हो, गरीब हो, चाहे बिजनेस कम्युनिटी, एमएसएमई में जितने लोग लगे हुए हैं और दूर दराज के जितने भी लोग हैं, सबके लिए इतना शानदार बजट दिया है।
In a way, the Honorable Finance Minister has met the demand of large section of middle class, particularly as more and more poor are coming into the middle class with rising incomes. The last report was 25 crore poor have now come into the middle class, have been relieved from multidimensional poverty. I think it's a great relief.
All eyes will now be on the new income tax bill that the government is bringing soon. Bureau Report, India Today.
I want to go across now to senior Congress leader Praveen Chakravarti, chairperson of the Professionals Congress and Data Analytics of the Indian National Congress, now joining us. Naina Lal Kidwai joins us as well. I want to go across to Praveen Chakravarti first. A lot in the opposition, many in the opposition were saying the government must spur demand, must boost consumption, must give more money to the Aam Aadmi. The government has gone out and done that, and now naturally the middle class is cheering. This was the one constituency which seemed a bit miffed with not really being treated with TLC, with love and care. Do you think the government's been able to address that issue, which is kind of building up, and they've now gone and bitten the bullet and left more money in the wallets of the taxpayers?
Yes. See, to the extent that, I think the term middle class is somewhat overused and abused, but to the extent that people in that income range will have to now not pay taxes or pay lower taxes, it is welcome. But I think, Rahul, what we really want to do is to take a step back. And like I said, that is welcome. But if the larger economic intent behind it was to stimulate demand, consumption demand, because the private sector has refused to invest in the last decade, regardless of how much the government has pleaded with them. So then the last resort was to try and stimulate demand. Now, to that extent, while this is welcome, I would have liked to see a bolder statement from the finance minister saying GST, indirect taxes, that is regressive, that would immediately stimulate consumption demand. And while I understand that GST rates will be set up by the decided by the GST Council, a signal from the Union Finance Minister in the budget saying we are committed to lowering GST rates across. And
no, but that's an unfair expectation. Imagine if she had done it, the likes of Praveen Chakravarti, Mr. Chidambaram and the others would have been critiquing her, saying that there's a GST council for this, all the finance ministers from the different states sit with the union finance minister. That's where this discussion should have happened. This is an authoritarian government. They've unilaterally gone and announced their intent. This is not the right thing to do. You would have been criticizing exactly what you're now advocating.
No. That's not at all true. I mean, it is no secret that the union government has the veto and has 2/3, and it has most of the state governments in the council. So I'm not saying, that's why I said, I think the signal, I used the word signal is important. But I think, Rahul, we have to take a step back. What was the context when we entered this budget? I mean, the context was global economic headwinds. The economic seas were choppy. There were holes in our economic boat. What was needed was for us to move to a new boat. Instead, what we got was trying to tinker with the existing board. And the chief economic advisor in his economic survey actually had a proposal for a new board. And that proposal was get out of the way and trust businesses and people.
No, but both of those have been key tenets of this budget. A new committee being set up to try and reduce regulation, the new direct tax code having 50% of the current regulations and tax burden. Therefore, the government, through talk and through action, signaling that it does intend to try and make it easier to do business and just to increase the ease of living.
Absolutely not. When, in fact, they've done to the contrary. When the chief economic advisor said, get out of the way. So let's take exports. I'm glad that the government has recognized exports as an important driver of economic growth. But what did it need? It needed a radical reverse cutting of import duties across the board. It needed the finance minister to signal to the export fraternity that you will have flexible exchange rates, we will get into bilateral, multilateral agreements. Instead, what we got was basic customs duty cut for wet blue leather and some fish products. I mean, that is called tinkering. That's not a new board. And this is exactly what the chief economic advisor meant by get out of the way. And instead, the government and the finance minister is now more in the way. No,
but I don't agree, because the moment you say, okay, we'll sign multilateral and bilateral trade agreements and take that pressure and put that onus on yourself, you're negotiating you're compromising your negotiating capabilities. You'd much rather go out and say, okay, we may want a deal, we may not want a deal. It depends on what the other side puts on the table. You want to push back. The moment you commit in Parliament, we'll be doing X, Y, Z, bilateral or multilateral deals this year, and that's our key focus. You're really pushing yourself into a corner in those trade negotiations, Mr. Chakravarti.
No, I think you're pushing yourself into a corner here. Because, on one hand, we have very clearly said the budget is a statement of intent. It's a statement of signal. And the idea was to tell businesses, to give them confidence, to tell them, go ahead, inspire trust and confidence. I'm only using the chief economic advisor's own words. And that was what was needed. Like I said, we saw very, very, very little in terms of getting us onto a new board. So instead of getting out of the way, the government is more in the way. I mean, we saw that in the entire budget speech, tinkering with rates and tinkering with customs duties and changing definitions of MSMEs. The board as a whole. Get a new board. Don't try and repair this board or tinker this board.
It's a bit ironic that you're saying it because you're from the Congress party and your government has made more budgets, your party has made more budgets than this party has. And that is what we saw.
There you go. Go back to what happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago. We are in 2025. We're looking ahead. We're looking forward.
What impact do you expect? If you can just leave your political hat aside for a moment, put on a data crunching hat. Now that more money is being left in the hands of the taxpayer, Praveen, what impact do you expect this will have on consumption? Because you say that private Inc. is not investing, India Inc. is not investing because they weren't seeing visibility on the horizon of consumption demand going up. Now that that's likely to happen, how do you see that potentially spur investment by India Inc. in the quarters to come?
I looked at the income tax statistics for assessment year 2023-24. As per my analysis, there'll be about 1.5 million beneficiaries of this enhanced increased tax exemption threshold. And to that extent, and to the extent that these 1.5 million people will go out and spend that money, I think it can be a positive. Will it definitely be, will it provide that boost that will take private investment from about 19% of GDP into the mid-20s? I'm not so sure. I think this has to be complemented with the radical rationalization of GST rates. For example, Rahul, there is simply no need for anybody to pay 48% GST on a car. It doesn't matter who brought in this proposal or who brought in those rates, whether it was 20 years old or 10 years old, it doesn't matter. We have to go forward. 48%. I mean, I'm using that as an example. So this has to be complemented with a rationalization and a reduction of GST rates, which, by the way, is a regressive indirect tax, which will immediately trigger consumption demand. And that is sure to trigger demand and private investment.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Praveen Chakravarti from the Data Analytics Cell of the Congress Party for joining us with your critique. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I want to go across to Naina Lal Kidwai. She's been a top banker, and it will be very interesting to see her insights on the impact you think this extra money that's been left in the wallet of the taxpayer is likely to have. Because the taxpayer can choose to save it, invest it, spend it, which is the most efficient when it comes to spurring economic growth. And what do you see most likely to happen, and how is this likely to play out in your assessment?
Rahul, it's significant in that there's 1 lakh crore of money which the government is enabling and putting in the hands of the middle class. And to the extent that this money is spent for consumption and creating demand, it helps spiral growth. And I would hope more, therefore, that it's spent on consumption than on saving at this stage, because we need to have that flow through of demand, which then is very good for industry, which has been asking for this, which hopefully also then leads to the private capex and investment, which there has been a long-standing demand by the government. Why is the private sector not coming back in? Now, for this money to actually be there for the demand-led acceleration as we wanted, and let me say that the levels and rates that they've come in have been substantial. This is not tinkering at the margin, it's substantial. There will be other things like, inflation being checked. I was just hearing the discussion on GST, which could be seen as inflationary in that it eats into that individual budget. Interest rate and interest rate cuts, because 30% of all bank loans are now personal loans. So all the aspects that go into the spending basket of the middle class must also deliver, so that the money that is being saved through tax actually goes in to a spending where there's a feel-good feeling and people actually have the money to set forth there.
Shankaraya, how much of a lag is there typically between this announcement and the taxpayer then deciding whether he wants to consume, whether he wants to invest, whether he wants to save, and then potentially India Inc. looking at those consumption numbers and saying, okay, this means our capacity utilization is going up further, and now we should use some of the cash lying on our balance sheets to go out and invest?
So, well, the milestones would be first the passage of the finance bill, and the second milestone would be individuals assessing what their tax outgo would be and how much cash they have got balance in their accounts. So I think this will go on into the next festival season. You might see the first kick up in the consumption. I mean, there will be some preemptive purchases. I mean, people would get excited that, so those who have surplus will typically know that their surplus will be higher, so they might have a new holiday or purchase a new device or something. But on the overall picture, I think you will have to wait for at least a minimum of 6 months to sort of get a sense of where this is going. And remember, all of this also is having the income assurance. So people get a chill factor when tax rates are cut. They feel that there was something uncertain is supposed to, the familiar becomes uncertain. And so they will wait out to see whether everything is fine, and then they might probably work towards the spending. I think 6 months should be a good milestone.
I want to go across now to Anand Goenka, Vice Chairperson at RPG Group. They're into tires, IT, infrastructure, pharmaceuticals, plantation, energy, utilities. So you've got a cross-section of industries we can get some insights into. So Anand, welcome. How enthused are you by the government leaving more money in the pockets of the taxpayer, and what kind of impact and what time frame do you anticipate that this impact will be felt by companies such as yours in deciding whether they wish to increase their investment outlooks for their different sectors?
Right. I think it's something that we as an industry wanted the government to put in some money, and I think the government has answered in a big way to make that happen. In my view, this will spur private investment coming in, and I would say possibly about a quarter wait, because I think people will start absorbing the benefits, and slowly start investing. So I would say maybe about a quarter away by the time consumption happens. And then for investment, of course, your capacity utilization has to go up. There'll be many other factors such as the geopolitical risk that's we're likely to face. But over time, all these benefits will start paying off.
Okay, and are you disappointed with the government's growth targets for next year? Would you have liked the finance minister to be more ambitious? They set a range of 6.3 to 6.8%, which is roughly the same as where we could end up this year, give or take. Would you have wanted them to be more bold and ambitious there?
No, certainly. I think it would have been great if we could grow at a faster pace, but I think possibly it's a fair estimate that we are a complex country. There's still a lot to be done. And I think the bigger thing is the global uncertainty that we face, broken supply chains. What the US is going to do is very unclear. And for these initiatives to take effect, I would still say these are plans and ideas which will get implemented over the next, say, 6 months, 1 year, and over time. But I think the initiatives taken are great. I think some of the things that I really liked in the budget was the fact there was continuous messaging of simplification, deregulation, making lives easier for business with trust. So as these things play out, I think it is really the areas that we were looking at in terms of making life easier for manufacturing and for business going forward.
Shankar Iyer has a question. Shankar.
Hello, Anant. How are you? You expanded the footprint of your business. I'm sure your grandfather would have been very thrilled. Your acquisition of Camso, how does this play into, because it's an American footprint, you got the Indian footprint. How does this play into the Trump tariff story? Are you sort of inoculated, or do you have some concerns? How does this work out for you? The whole uncertainty over the supply chain issue, because you will be also looking at other markets.
Right. So Camso is a complex business. We acquired it from the French, manufacturing in Sri Lanka, markets in EU and US, and at one time headquartered in Canada. So it's really all over the place. But we are very, very positive. I don't think Sri Lanka as a manufacturing place is yet in Trump's radar. He will, in my view, go into EU, Mexico, Canada, China as possibly his first areas of tariff imposition. And why we acquired it was because we saw a lot of synergies between CEAT and Camso. We found that there are a lot of tires that can be made in the Camso brand by CEAT and vice versa. So the synergistic advantages are very high. It's a very premium brand. And we feel that acquiring a brand and getting market access today is extremely, extremely valuable. We found that manufacturing capacity of Camso today is at about 50% utilization. So no capex needed for some time. And if we are able to get the synergies that we want in the construction and the agricultural space, we'll be in good space.
Ms. Kidwai, do you see a disconnect between government's economic managers saying that the slowdown witnessed in the second quarter in growth numbers in this fiscal is just temporary and that growth will bounce back in double quick time? And then yet for next year, they set a growth target which is just about the same as the tempered growth that they're expecting this year. You know, I see a fundamental contradiction there. I mean, if you're thinking that it'll bounce back, then shouldn't they be taking a more ambitious growth target for next year?
So the range is wide, 6.3 to 6.8, and one can hope that we would push to 6.8. I think one of the reasons was just that the capex expenditure, which the public sector expenditure set at 11.1 lakh crore, is going to wind up at more like the 10.1 sort of levels, which they have declared. And the number which we were somewhat disappointed, I was at FICCI earlier this morning, was 11.2 for next year on the capex front. But I've just heard the Revenue Secretary explain that in fact, the number is more like 15.6, because what we should be looking at is the capex that has been dedicated for the state level expenditure. And that would therefore mean a 17% increase from the number that was set out for last year.
Do you buy the government's argument that because there was an election, Therefore, the spends in public infrastructure didn't happen. Everybody was in a wait and watch mode because, on the contrary, there are people who say, the state governments simply don't have the capacity to go out and consume the spends that are being made available to them, and therefore don't blame just the election cycle. There's a larger structural problem in terms of capacity to get things done.
Yeah, and both are linked in a way, because what happens in an election cycle is everybody takes their eye off the ball on spending, the administration's busy managing elections, and budgets do get frozen. On the absorptive capacity, yes, there are also issues. I see that in the water and sanitation areas that I work in, where the ability for the Gram Panchayat and the state to actually utilize budgets which the center thrusts down to them in these critical sectors is an issue. And we have seen, therefore, the public-private partnerships that we, through the Drinking Water and Sanitation Ministry, have set up with the private sector working very well, where the private sector does not put the money in, but is in fact helping government spend that money in a material way in the rural areas. Urban is still an issue. And I think to the extent that the CapEx is going towards these very important programs of rail, road, sanitation, water, and big increases in budget, which I think will continue, have been mentioned as for Jal Shakti. There's an increase of 198%, in the Swachh Bharat 145% for the next year, are all indications of good programs which will continue to see investment where, in fact, we do need these because they contribute to the health of the nation and contribute to better hygiene and will therefore help the workforce as well.
Naina Lal Kidwai, Anand Goenka for joining us on this special budget broadcast. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time and your insights. Slipping into a quick break right now. When we come back, we look at different things. But the one aspect I haven't spent much time on right now is the impact this could have on the Delhi elections. Because the BJP thinks that with a huge middle class vote in Delhi, that there's bound to be a level of enthusiasm amongst voters around this announcement. So what's the view in the political field? We'll have some business guests and market guests also joining us when we come back on the other side of a very quick break. Stay with us.
Hey Google, how do I do a wing liner? AI Ray. Flip the script with the new Motorola Razr 50 series.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola Razr 50 Ultra comes with Google Gemini.
Hi, I am AI anchor Sana, bringing the top headlines for you, presented by Motorola. Major push for regional air connectivity in Union Budget, 88 airports to link small cities. PM Narendra Modi praises Union Budget, says it will fulfill the aspirations of 140 crore Indians. Akali Dal MP Harsimrat Kaur Badal slams Union Budget, calls it anti-farmer.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
Hey Google, how do I do a wing liner? AI Re. Flip the script with the new Motorola Razr 50 series.
Hello, Moto.
Development of at least 100 gigawatt of nuclear energy by 2047 is essential for our energy transition efforts. For an active partnership with the private sector towards this goal, amendments to the Atomic Energy Act and the Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage Act will be taken up. A nuclear energy mission for research and development of small modular reactors with an outlay of 20,000 crore will be set up. At least 5 indigenously developed small modular reactors will be operationalized by 2033.
I'm joined on this part of the broadcast by two people who have the same surname but come from very different sectors. I want to introduce first Nilesh Shah, Managing Director of Kotak Mahindra Asset Management Company. I have Jasmine Shah, National Spokesperson of the Aam Aadmi Party. So we don't mix it up. We'll go one by one and I'll go to Nilesh Shah first. Nilesh, the markets were rather muted in their response to the announcements from Finance Minister Sitharaman. We've seen a correction over the past few weeks, the BSE coming down from 85,000 odd to about 77,000 odd right now. On the basis of what you've heard in this budget and from everything else that you're seeing in the financial ecosystem, what's your outlook on a 6-month basis in terms of how much time it may take for the markets to reverse these corrections and come back to their highs and then beyond?
So right now, markets are driven by a lot of selling from FPI. And while they are not selling like they were selling during COVID time without price limit, but their selling is visible. Even today, they were a net seller. Now, when the side of the seller is known, obviously buyer will be cautious. Second, our valuations were reasonably high over our emerging market peer group. On a 5-year basis, Indian markets have delivered similar return like US. So there is a fair amount of profit on the table. As long as FPIs are sellers, I don't think so market is going to give them easy exit and there will be correction. But this budget has laid the foundation for growth to recover. And if monetary policy supports, then we'll have both fiscal and monetary support to the growth. Our GDP growth as well as corporate earnings could be better than the peer group, and eventually FPI investors will also return.
But are you seeing any signs on the horizon of foreign portfolio investors coming back soon? Because the last couple of months have seen the rate of increase of SIPs actually come down. So basically, so far we were seeing a trend where domestic investors month after month had got used to the advice given by the likes of Nilesh Shah that, save, invest, prosper, this is the best way to go. And they were seeing, significant financial returns and therefore were happy with it. Now with the markets correcting, and with foreign portfolio investors showing net outflows, they would be concerned about whether that holds in the future. So that may deter people from coming in, and therefore this consistent supply of domestic funds that we've seen from small investors, retail investors coming into the Indian markets with mutual funds propping up and giving support to the markets, that theory may not just hold in the way that it's held for the last couple of years.
So one, we don't foresee FPIs turning buyers in a hurry as they are exiting emerging market as an asset class. And US has done exceptionally well, whereas emerging market bogged down by China has not done as well. If emerging market as an asset class is seeing exit, I don't foresee how foreigners will be willing to invest in emerging markets, including India. Number two, US interest rates are right now at a fairly higher level of 4.5%. With that kind of risk-free rate, the expected return from Indian markets or emerging markets will be much higher. So we will see foreigners selling slowing down a little, but I don't see them turning positive soon. To domestic investors, we have always said maintain your asset allocation. As of today, despite our strong outperformance in last 5 years, people have put more money in currency notes than equity market. So I'm only requesting investors like Rahul Bhai, please don't keep cash at home. If you invest through SIP in mutual funds and maintain your asset allocation, you will still make more return.
I have no cash at home, I'm all in. So therefore the markets correcting in the way that they have is quite problematic, and we'd like that to reverse. Now, one of the reasons why foreign portfolio investors were more bullish on American markets was also the performance, the outsized performance of the Magnificent Seven, the tech stocks, the deep tech stocks, which had seen a massive run-up in pricing. Now that we've seen DeepSeek come out with very innovative and low-cost models of being able to put out the same computational power through their algorithms, do you see that change the outlook of these foreign investors on American tech? Because that's really key to what's been driving the American markets and generating these outsized returns for investors in the American stock markets.
So undoubtedly, there is some pressure on Magnificent Seven because of rapid advancement of technology by China. But we have started seeing some amount of flows going to equal weighted ETFs, where Magnificent Seven has been reduced significantly in terms of their weightage. We have also started seeing broad-based recovery, broad-based rally in 493 other stocks of S&P 500. With the tariffs and the potential tax cuts being offered by Trump administration, I think there will be case for investors to bet on 493 other stocks in US. And if Fed indeed provides liquidity or cut rates, then that rally can sustain for long. So right now, if not Magnificent Seven, 493 other stocks will carry the US market ahead.
So the next Monetary Policy Committee of the RBI meets on the 5th of February. You spoke about what the government has done on the fiscal side. What are you most realistically expecting on the monetary side, and how might this impact growth? There's a new RBI governor at the helm, a lot of pressure on him to reduce policy rates by about 25 basis points. Do you see that happen, given the position that had been taken by Shaktikanta Das, which was to push back against the pressure for cutting interest rates?
So RBI will be data-driven, and as of today, we need liquidity more than the rate cut. Through open market operation, buy-sell swaps and VRR, RBI has pumped in about 150,000 crore liquidity from here over next 30 days. With this budget where fiscal prudence is established, and not only this year, but next year's fiscal deficit has come below expectation. And more importantly, debt to GDP ratio will be in declining trajectory for next 6 years. That should give some room to the RBI to cut rates. Our inflation is reasonably under the RBI's target range. And hence, we will recommend first liquidity enhancement, which they have partially done, and second, rate cut so that our growth can be supported.
No, but from Moody's we've heard, they're saying that, India is likely to perform lesser than investment grade peers. The expectation was that if we continue on this fiscal glide path, keep fiscal deficit under control, that there might be a re-rating of India to investment grade. Moody's, at least in the initial assessment of this budget, seems to be suggesting that that's not how they read it.
Well, their name is Moody's, and hence their findings are also Moody. And their competitor says that our standards are poor. For example, what are they rating? Are they rating India's rupee rating? Then by definition, it should be AAA because we have unlimited power to print currency. The second is no, they are rating our foreign currency debt. Now, we are one of the few countries in the world whose net foreign exchange reserve is more than the net foreign exchange debt. How can you rate a company below investment grade or near investment grade if my cash position is more than the debt? So their names, Moody's and poor standards, suggest that we should not take them seriously.
I wish it was as simple as that, then that would make life easier. But I have one final very quick question before I let you go. We saw the consumer-facing chips in the green all through the day during the budget speech and soon after. How much of a lag are you expecting between this announcement, between consumer demand actually increasing, and the lag between Indian companies then deciding to increase their investment appetites?
So this 1 lakh crore tax rebate given to taxpayer is just a catalyst for multiplier effect. It should be supported first by higher liquidity and credit creation. Then it should be supported by lower rates. And finally, it should be supported by ease of doing business on the ground so that we can have a virtuous cycle of demand creating higher capacity utilization leading to higher investment and eventually creating more jobs. The consumer stocks were kind of neglected sector in the market. Infrastructure and capital goods and real estate had done exceptionally well. There is limited supply in consumer names because there is hardly any issuance. Put together, under ownership and limited supply along with this catalyst has pushed consumer stocks up. For them to sustain at the current valuation, it requires not only the current 1 lakh crore tax rebate, but also the multiplier effect of that flowing through.
Well, you always speak candidly and have sharp original insights, which is why I was keen that you join us. Thank you very much, Nilesh Bhai, for joining us on this broadcast. It's not just Moody's that is moody, Jasmine Shah, even the voters of Delhi are very moody. And the key expectation the Finance Minister and the BJP have is that now that they've given this change in tax structures, left more money with the middle class taxpayer, that this will yield bumper dividend, have the highest return on investment on the 5th of February. How alarmed are you?
Rahul, first let me tell you that I'm happy that because Mr. Arvind Kejriwal put so much of pressure that the middle class of India is expecting so much from the BJP government, and the first demand amongst the 7 demands that he made almost 2 weeks back was to raise the income tax exemption limit, that finally today BJP has woken up.
So this is impact Kejriwal.
And has said, no, absolutely. You remember when Mr. Kejriwal came and made those 7 demands, for 2 days, all the national media was discussing it, कि middle class की कौन पहली बार कोई बात कर रहा है. So we are very happy that एक चीज उन्होंने सुन ली. But now I'll disagree with you. This is an extremely disappointing budget for every citizen of Delhi, including the middle class, because the middle class has not benefited. A small fraction of the middle class has benefited. Rahul, there are many, I would say, numbers that show that around 30% of the population is middle class. Now, how many are going to get benefit of the income tax exemption? There are only around 3 crore income tax payers in India, which is around 2% of the population. So, matlab, only, I would say, maybe 5 to 10% of the middle class is going to benefit from this. What happens to the remaining 90%
No, but it's not as simple as that, Jasmine, it's not as simple as that, because there is signaling, there is intent, and there is semantics and mood. Mahal. Elections are about mahal. Now the BJP can build this mahal. Humne middle class ko rahat di. We've left money in your pocket. Balle balle. That's the messaging.
Rahul, जब पॉकेट में हर दिन आपके ऊपर महंगाई की इतनी मार पड़ी हुई है, just think about what the remaining middle class and the remaining population of Delhi is going through, and I would say the rest of India. You look at the inflation. One of our 7 demands was to reduce GST on essential items because everybody pays indirect taxes. Aapne dekho, for the first time in Indian history, GST has been put on essential food items, 18% on things like health insurance. Look at the excise tax on petrol, diesel. We had demanded reduce those. But more importantly, it's also important to ask, what are you doing with the remaining? You have a 50 lakh crore budget. Aapne middle class ke liye kya kiya? We have demanded that the health and education budget be increased to 10% so that quality schools and quality healthcare can be given even to the middle classes, like we have done in Delhi. What did the BJP do? Nothing. Today, the health budget, which was announced in today's budget, is only 1.9%. We had asked for 10%. The education budget is only 2.5%. It used to be 5% when Prime Minister Moody ji came to power. So you have literally to a dying middle class, to a hurting middle class, which was hurting for the last 10 years. You come eventually and give a small lollipop and say कि आप खुश रहो अब और सवाल मत पूछो. I think the people of this country and the people of Delhi
You're
are
calling this a lollipop. Let me get an independent take on this. Shankar Iyer, whether it's a lollipop or a Swiss chocolate, we don't know just yet. It's everybody's view. Ultimately some may think of it as a very fine dark cacao sweet Swiss chocolate. Some may think it's a lollipop. How is this likely to play out on the 5th? The BJP over the next 48 hours will go all guns blazing.
So, first approach of the Aam Aadmi Party is to claim credit that we did the middle class budget, so we are going to get this thing. The BJP, of course, will hammer it down the throats of everyone, the 37, 38, 40% vote that they have already, and plus maybe add. The outcome of the election will be decided by the bottom of the pyramid in Delhi, basically.
The non-taxpayer.
Not the taxpayer. So, how does BJP sell the budget to the bottom of the pyramid is the question now. So, there are two elements in this which are interesting. One is the Udyam credit card, the micro enterprises ke liye jo credit card. The other is the various schemes that have been announced for various health and education and other initiatives. Eventually, I think it will be the women voter whether she's choosing the 2100 or the 2500, which will make the difference in the Delhi election. Knowing Delhi, it's like, they always hedge their bets, so you never know about...
No, but I asked the Home Minister this question, Jasmine Shah, about the AAP model of freebies versus BJP also coming up with so many reveries. And he says that we do it with balance, we do it in moderation and calibration, whereas the AAP goes overboard. They have no sense of calibration in terms of what limit should these freebies be restricted to. He says we keep it to less than 8% of any state budget. And therefore, we're being responsible. He's accusing you, and that's the message that they're taking to voters of the AAP being irresponsible. Jasmine Shah.
This is very interesting logic that BJP gives, that for the people, spend only 8% of the budget. The remaining budget should go for the rich classes. And that is the difference between AAP and BJP's approach to governance. BJP in the last 5 years has written off 10 lakh crores of loans to the rich. Tab unko yaad nahi aayi middle class ki. Aaj jab, they are saying that the shortfall because of this tax rebate is going to be 1 lakh crore. तो आपने 1 लाख करोड़ केवल माफ किया है मिडिल क्लास के लिए, and you think this is like the biggest thing on earth that you have done for them. What about jobs? What about people who do not have income? What happened to the 2 crores per year jobs ka wada? 90% of Indian population earns less than 25,000 rupees per month. What happens to them? उनको तो इन्फ्लेशन झेलना पड़ रहा है, उनको हाई जीएसटी झेलना पड़ रहा है, पेट्रोल एंड डीजल पे 3 गुना जो एक्साइज लगा दिया वो झेलना पड़ रहा है. So that is there is no vision for growth. And India, which does not spend on health and education, will never become a Viksit Bharat. आप भले जितना Viksit Bharat, there must be a dozen times that Nirmala Sitharaman ji today spoke about Viksit Bharat. लेकिन government schools का एक बार नाम नहीं लिया उन्होंने पूरी budget speech में. This is the shallowness of the vision of BJP. कि आप अमीर लोगों के ऊपर खर्च करो तो Viksit Bharat बन जाएगा. Aam Aadmi Party believes in investing in health and education first, giving good quality services to everyone, including the middle classes. Today, middle classes are coming in our mohalla clinics. But tell me, in Gujarat and all the BJP ruled states, do middle class go to health and education facilities of the government? They have checked out. They have no other option because you don't spend money of them.
Well, we'll have a lot of opportunity over the next 48 hours to discuss politics, and then, of course, the polling on the 5th and the big counting day. There's an exciting election going on. There's an exciting budget. A lot to talk about in terms of what was actually done. Jasmine Shah for joining us with your thoughts. You heard from two Shahs, one from the markets, one from the world of politics. Thank you for joining us. Shankar, you've been an absolute delight. Lots of sharp, original insights as always. So thank you for coming down and joining us as part of this broadcast.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. We're slipping into a quick break. This is where I wrap up our coverage. Rajdeep Sardesai comes up next on the other side of a quick break. Stay with us. I hope you enjoyed this broadcast. Bye-bye. Good night.
मैं कहूँगी कि संतुष्ट इसलिए हूँ कि आज जनता की सुनवाई फाइनली इस गूंगी बहरी सरकार ने पिछले 10 साल से जनता की एक ही अपेक्षा थी, एक ही मांग थी कि आप करिए, जो गरीब जनता है उनके लिए काम करिए, उनके लिए व्यवस्थाएं बनाए, पर जो मिडिल क्लास है उनको भी राहत की सांस मिले। 12 लाख तक की जिसकी सैलरी होगी और वो न्यू टैक्स रेजिम में चला गया होगा, उनको ये राहत मिलेगी। तो उसको हम स्वागत करते हैं क्योंकि उनकी लड़ाई का महत्वपूर्ण मैं कहती हूँ ये मिडिल क्लास की सबसे बड़ी जीत है। ये 240 वोट पर आने की जीत है क्योंकि जिस तरीके से पिछले 10 साल से मिडिल क्लास की यही मांग थी कि हम लोग सैलरी कमाते हैं, उससे ज़्यादा खर्चा हमारा टैक्स में चला जाता है, ना सेविंग होती है, ना इन्वेस्टमेंट होता है। आज फाइनली उनकी सुनवाई हुई है तो मैं उसका स्वागत करती हूँ। पहली बात ये, बिहार सोच रहा होगा कि काश हर साल चुनाव हो बिहार में, जैसे हमारी जो केंद्र सरकार है उनके बारे में कोई योजनाएं बता सकें। बिहार में चुनाव आ रहा है, 2 तरीके से पता चलता है, जब ध्रुवीकरण शुरू करते हैं और आम आदमी का बजट अनाउंस होता है। तो बिहार भी उम्मीद कर रहा होगा।
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
Development of at least 100 gigawatt of nuclear energy by 2047 is essential for our energy transition efforts. For an active partnership with the private sector towards this goal, amendments to the Atomic Energy Act and the Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage Act will be taken up. A nuclear energy mission for research and development of small modular reactors with an outlay of 20,000 crore will be set up. At least 5 indigenously developed small modular reactors will be operationalized by 2033. .
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
Presented by Kia Ceros, evolved by the future. Book now. Co-presented by Veka, India's largest selling UPVC window.
Hello and welcome to this India Today special on the Big B Day or the Big Budget Day, a budget that is being termed as the middle class budget of the Narendra Modi government, a budget that has triggered plenty of debate. We will be talking politics of the budget here on this special show. But first, let's tell you the big takeaways from Budget 2025. No income tax payable on annual income up to 12 lakh rupees. That's the big relief for the Indian middle class. Big changes in the income tax slabs in the new regime. No changes in the old income tax regime. The new income tax bill will be tabled in the budget session. A limit for TDS on interest for senior citizens now up from 50,000 rupees to 1 lakh. 15,000 crores for completion of 1 lakh units in stressed housing projects. The FDI limit in insurance sector is up from 74% to 100%. A Makhana board is being set up for farmers in Bihar. Bihar, a word mentioned 8 times in the budget. Expansion of Patna's airport capacity, a brownfield airport also being set up in another state that's going to the polls, Bihar. 5 IITs to be set up across the country to get an infra push to add 6,500 more students, 10,000 medical undergraduates and postgraduate seats to be added, 50,000 Atal tinkering labs will be set up in government schools, and the fiscal deficit target has been set at 4.4%. But of course, the big takeaway remains the various tax breaks that have been given to presumably what many of us would define as the middle class. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's big announcement made at the end of her speech for the middle class with a new tax, under the new regime, income tax up to rupees 12 lakh, income up to rupees 12 lakhs per annum will be rebatable. The opposition though says that the budget simply doesn't have enough for those who really need it the most and will not trigger off growth as was being promised. Take a look at Budget 2025 of Nirmala Sitharaman.
To taxpayers up to 12 lakh of income, other than special rate income such as capital gains, tax rebate is being provided in addition to the benefit in such a manner that there is no tax payable by them.
Modi government rolls out massive tax sops in budget for middle class and salaried sections, launching a pocket booster budget, announcing a series of welfare measures for Garib, Yuva, Annadata and Nari, putting special focus on poor and underprivileged.
In this budget, the proposed development measures span 10 broad areas, focusing on Garib, youth, Annadata and Nari, spurring agricultural growth and productivity, building rural prosperity and resilience, taking everyone together on an inclusive growth path.
While the BJP hailed the budget as path-breaking, the opposition is clearly unimpressed and called it hopeless and lacking focus.
ये जो बजट की विशेषता ये है कि हमारी इकोनॉमी को एक्सेलरेट करने वाला ये बजट है। जहां तक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को हर समय वित्त मंत्री प्राथमिकता देते हैं, इस समय भी हमारा बजट बढ़ा है, जिसके कारण इंफ्रा रोड सेक्टर में इसका बहुत बड़ा फायदा होगा।
Youth unemployment is particularly grim at the moment. We have the world record in youth unemployment and in college-educated unemployed. So what is the method to generate jobs for these people?
I think this is a feel-good budget. This is one in which it will incur more spending, infrastructure, the capex has gone up. If you look at the income tax, especially personal income tax, again, it's a very massive increase from 7 lakhs to 12 lakhs.
We have lowered the middle class, but it is because of Delhi election, nothing else. Because last in Delhi, large number of people who are salaried people, working class, so to lure the votes. This is all the game they are playing.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi hailed the budget as empowering for the middle class and poor. He said that the Janta Janardhan budget fills pockets of all sections, while previous governments merely used the budget to fill their coffers.
आमतौर पर बजट का फोकस इस बात पर रहता है कि सरकार का खजाना कैसे भरेगा, देश के नागरिक विकास के भागीदार कैसे बनेंगे। ये बजट इसकी एक बहुत मजबूत नींव रखता है।
The budget comes just days ahead of Delhi polls. Will it end up influencing its outcome? Bureau Report, India Today.
Okay, let's then turn on this big B day or the big budget day to someone who knows a thing or two about budgets, delivered 10 budgets. Joining me now, former Finance Minister P. Chidambaram joins me. Appreciate your joining us, Mr. Chidambaram. Your big takeaway from budget 2025, the government is saying this is the ultimate middle class budget with the big tax relief given to the middle class taxpayers. Your response?
As far as the government is concerned,